Well, the much anticipated GenErase tool for Luminar Neo has finally landed in my inbox. I have a copy of the beta version, and my first impressions are, well, yes and no. There's some pros and some cons. I'm Darlene, Digital Photo Mentor, and in this quick video, I'll give you my first impressions and some things to watch out for regarding the new GenErase tool. So if you're ready, let's begin. Before I get started, I just want to address any questions you might have about access to the tool and you can't find it inside Luminar Neo. That is because it is only in the beta version and it's been delivered to partners only. So people like myself who are ambassadors have access to it a bit early. It will be delivered to everyone who qualifies to receive it on October 26th. That means if you have a current subscription to Luminar Neo or you've purchased a Creative Journey Pass. If you have an older license, you need to upgrade to either one of those two things. If you want to get the subscription or the Creative Pass, remember to use my discount code DPM10 to get 10% off. Now, let's hop over to Neo and take a look at the new GenErase tool. The first thing you'll notice is that it's located on the Catalog tab with the extensions, not in the Edit tab with the tools. So that surprised me a little bit. To activate it, you can just drag and drop your image onto the tool, or if your image is highlighted, just click it and it will open into GenErase. The interface itself is quite simple. You have select and a cursor. You can increase the size using the keyboard shortcuts like usual, square bracket keys left and right, or the slider here. Let's say we want to remove this boat. Just paint over it. And of course, if you make a mistake, you can choose deselect. I want to make sure I don't lose this ripple here in the water. And once you're happy with your selection, just click erase. One thing to note is it does take quite a while for it to analyze the image and to come up with a result. I'm going to tell you how long this takes in real time, and I'll be back when it's finished. Okay, see what I mean? So the first thing to note is that it's pretty slow right now. I'm hoping that's just because it's a beta and that it will be improved with the final version when it's delivered. But when we take a look at the results, you can see where I highlighted the selection. And if I move my mouse off the image itself, you can see that it did indeed remove the boat. If you want to remove something else, you can just reset and paint again. Make sure to change the button to select if you've deselected anything. And off you go to erase again. Et voila. So far, it's done a pretty good job. You can use the backslash key to see a before and after, or press the eyeball here. Unfortunately, the keyboard shortcuts for zooming in and out don't work. Again, I'm hoping that's just in the beta version, but you can zoom in and out using these options from the pull-down menu. Currently, undo and redo also don't work. When you're finished, just click Save in the upper right corner. And it's saved into a new folder called Generative Creations. You can see a few other images here as well that I've already been experimenting with. Let me show you a few before and afters. Skylum provided a couple of images for us to play around with and practice and included the after images, but I ran them through again just to make sure that I could get the same result. Here's one image that I used it on, and I was able to successfully remove all the cars and the extra potholes or manhole covers in the crosswalk, so it did a really good job on this image. This is a stock image that I downloaded from unsplash.com, and you can see the grass coming across in front of the dog, so I used GenErase to see what it could do on this one. Here's the after. Again, a pretty successful result. This is another image provided as a sample by Skylum. Let's see what happens with the removal of the people in the center. Here's the provided after image. Not bad. Then I ran it through myself to see what the tool would do if I tried it. I was not able to get the same result that they provided in their after image, but the one I did get was pretty decent. But if I zoom in quite far onto the rows of the gates at this temple, which I've actually been to, by the way, it's in Kyoto, Japan, you can see that the markings on the columns or the pillars kind of becomes a little bit jumbled, and the columns themselves start to get mixed together. So the lines and the continuation of the pattern isn't perfect when you zoom in. So just for comparison and for fun, I ran this same image through Photoshop using Photoshop's Generative AI fill. This is the result I got with Photoshop. Note, when I zoom in on this one, you could see that it actually interpreted that these gates would continue into infinity and actually curve to the side a little bit. So in this case, I think Photoshop still had the upper hand. But one thing to consider is that Photoshop's been through the beta trials already, and some of the results that I got out of Photoshop when it was in beta mode were pretty strange as well. So this is just the first iteration of GenErase for Luminar Neo, and I think it's only going to improve from here. One thing I noticed is that it struggled a little bit with objects on the edges of the images. Like this one here, I wanted to remove the edge of the swimming pool and extend the water. So I tried GenErase. This is what I got. So it did indeed fill in the water with a shadow, but you'll notice there's a gray box at the bottom. No matter what I tried, I could not get it to fill in that area. I had the same problem on one of the sample images. This is the before image provided as a sample. This was the after image that Skylum provided. So I wanted to try and replicate it again. And this is the best that I could do with the tool. You'll notice that the bottom right corner and the top corners didn't fill in. I couldn't get those gray boxes to disappear. I tried selecting them over and over again, and I would still get the gray box. Going back to the Skylum after image, when you zoom in, can you see this repetitive pattern right here? Things like this are a key indicator that cloning has been done, and it's something that you want to avoid when you're doing manual cloning. Now the AI has filled in a repetitive pattern, so that's not a great result. Take a look at the things we needed to fill in. There was a man in a red shirt here, the power lines at the top, this umbrella and a sign, traffic on the road, and all of this stuff over on the right. In the Skylum provided after image, you could see that the road is pretty smooth, almost not believable. There's the repeating pattern issue here, and you could see it did kind of a bizarre thing here in the middle. Where the man in the red shirt was, it's a little bit clunky. When I ran it through Photoshop, it reproduced a more realistic shadow pattern and some debris on the road to match the rest of the road. Didn't have the repeating pattern here, and this section was a bit more realistic. It looks like there's the window continuation, and it even looks like somebody is holding that umbrella. If we look at this section a bit closer, you can see the tree is more realistic. So again, this is a more advanced program that has had the generative AI for a few months compared to Luminar that has just introduced it. So give it some time, and I'm hoping that Luminar will catch up. I have a couple more that I had some success with. I thought maybe I'll try and remove this bush on the left-hand corner of this image. It's out of focus. So let's see what happens if I run this through GenErase. And this is what I got. So it's actually pretty good, with the exception of the gray box on the bottom edge again. But it filled in some pretty realistic landscape, so that's kind of impressive. Here's another one that I wanted to try to remove that bird that was in the upper left corner, kind of out of focus. And as you can see, I was fairly successful at doing so using the GenErase tool. Now let's take a look at some that weren't quite so successful. Remember I said thumbs up and thumbs down? I got some odd results. I think that anytime you're dealing with generative AI technology, you're going to get some unpredictable things occurring. And that's what happened in these cases. In this image, I wanted to remove some of the elements that were on this old stove. So I selected them and made a few different attempts. You can see the first attempt gave me something that looked like a pot with a rag in it. Second attempt was totally different. And finally, the third attempt. So I wasn't getting any luck on this one. So I thought, well, maybe I need to remove everything on the stove. So I tried that. Oops, this is what I got. Kind of a mess, right? So I thought, well, let's see if Photoshop can do any better, because this is a disaster. So I ran it through Photoshop AI and I got this, and this, and this. So as you can see, neither of them did a great job, and it's probably because I've got too many things too close together and not enough context for it to try and know what to fill it in with. I learned my lesson on that one. Then I tried it on this one. This is a stock image, again, that I downloaded, and I thought I'll try to remove the blue bowl and the red collar. Pretty typical, you know, a pet photo that you might take, maybe with your dog, collar, or leash that you want to remove. So this is a common task that you might want to do on your images. Want to see what I got? I don't know what that is. It looks like a coconut egg dipped in chocolate or something. So I tried it a couple more times and I got even more bizarre results. However, you'll notice that it actually did a pretty good job on removing the collar. So why it gave me a hamster looking thing in this version, I have no idea. But it handled the collar well. I'll be sending these before and afters to Skylum as feedback because they're looking for how to improve the tool at this point because it is in a beta. So definitely they're going to be getting the hamster. And finally, here's another one that I had a fair bit of success with. This is one where I tried to use the erase tool previously to get rid of this broken bit here on this old watch, and I was able to do not a bad job, actually. If you have my Luminar Neo course, you'll recognize this image as one of the ones that's provided for you as practice files. If you'd like more information about Luminar Neo, the complete course, I'll put a link for you in the description area below. There's over 14 hours of lessons for you, including Q&A sessions that we did when we launched the program a year ago. So there's a ton of value here for you, including the raw files that I'm demonstrating with for you to follow along. So let's take a look at how GenErase did on this old watch. Pretty decent. It took me a couple of times and a couple of different selections to get this result, but it wasn't that difficult. There are a few things that I need you to be aware of once you get the GenErase tool in your hands. I think it can be and will be a powerful tool in your arsenal, but please be aware of these things. They may change with the final version or they may not. They haven't really said at this point. So this is all the information I have right now. First of all, as I've already mentioned previously, it's quite slow. So as you are doing your selections and hitting that erase button, have some patience. I usually just hit that button, go do something else, answer email, social media, or whatever, and wait for it to finish. Then I come back to Luminar Neo. The next thing you need to be aware of, and this is really important, is that that new file that it generates is a JPEG. So if you're starting with the raw file or a TIFF file, one of the examples I showed you of the old kitchen is actually a TIFF that was generated with Aurora HDR. And it's 16-bit high-res file. It was 135 megabytes. The JPEG that came through after using GenErase was only 4 megabytes. So it seems to be really crunching the image a lot. And the concern is that the resolution may not be high enough if you want to print the image. Again, I'm hoping this is something that they will change or fix in future versions of the tool. All of the other extensions that create a new file generate a TIFF. So let's hope we move in that direction. The next thing to note is that the new file is in a color space called Melissa RGB. I've never used that, and I don't know what purpose that color space is for. But in photography, you generally want to be in sRGB, Adobe RGB, or ProPhoto RGB. Take a look at what happens when you're viewing it inside Luminar Neo. This is the original, and watch as I switch over to the newly generated JPEG. See how there was a color shift for a moment as it loaded the preview? And if I go back to the catalog view, you'll notice that the ones that have been run through GenErase have a different color tint. Can you see that? That's because of that Melissa RGB color space. So this is one that's really important. If you want to use those erased files anywhere, you're going to need to re-export them. You can't just take that JPEG and put it online because it won't display correctly on a web browser. You can't print it because your lab definitely doesn't print in that color space. You need to re-export it in the sRGB color space. The next thing to note is that currently GenErase is not available if you are using Luminar Neo as a plugin for Lightroom or Photoshop. I tried taking an image from Lightroom into Neo the normal way, going edit in Luminar Neo, and it was not available there. Then I tried the other method, which is right-click and choose export to, and then there's a Luminar Neo list of the extensions which work for focus stacking, upscale, and HDR, and it wasn't there either. So it's possible that it's going to be added into one of those workflows at a later date, but currently GenErase does not work for the plugin version of Luminar Neo. Lastly, there is a list of known issues or bugs already with both the Mac and the Windows version. I mentioned a couple previously, such as undo and redo not working, the zoom function with keyboard shortcuts not working, and several others including RAM and memory usage when you're using that tool. As these were already in the release notes for this beta version, I'm sure these are things that they are going to be addressing with the next update. So there you have my yay and nay review of the GenErase tool in Luminar Neo. It's a bit hit or miss at this point, but I think there's potential. Remember, if you need to upgrade your Luminar Neo, use my discount code DPM10 to get 10% off. Please stick around and watch another video on my YouTube channel. Just click one on the screen now. Until next time, take care and have fun erasing.